All right. We are here this week on the WPMRR WordPress podcast with Bradley Denham. Bradley, I've said Bradley's name a bunch of times on the podcast, so people may know who I'm talking about, but this is, I think, your first time on the podcast, Bradley. So why don't you tell folks a little bit about what you do?
First off, it's good to reconnect, Joe, because we haven't talked in probably 3 to 5 months. But
a lot of Slack messages, a lot of emails, but yeah.
Yeah. So this is going to be good to just catch up. But yeah, a quick second on me. I'm Bradley Denham, the founder of recordeditpodcast.com, a turnkey podcast production service. Much like WP Buffs, we're in the productized service space, and business is growing slow and steady.
Yes, that's the way to do it. We've been growing slow and steady for about 5 years, so I'm a big fan of that. Yeah, Bradley is, for folks who don't know or who have not maybe listened to the podcast before, I'm saying, Bradley, make sure you edit this out. Bradley, thanks for all the great work you do with the podcast. Bradley's the reason why this podcast comes out every week, and the reason it sounds so professionally done. I remember when we started working together, Bradley, I was a little nervous to do a podcast because I always remember growing up, hearing my voice on a message machine and being it was cringy for me. I hated hearing my own voice. And then the first episode I was working with you on, you sent it back oh, here's the first draft, whatever. What do you think? And I remember I was oh my, I actually kind of enjoyed listening to my voice. I'm trying not to sound narcissistic, but I was I actually sound pretty good. Oh, this is what audio engineering is. This is what takes it from just your voice in a message machine to really high quality audio. So thanks for the 120-ish episodes of WPMRR podcast.
Love it. That's funny because a lot of people still struggle with hearing their voice even after the post-production is done. And honestly, that is one of the biggest hurdles in podcasting is up here, up in your brain. Because it really is any kind of content creation, especially when you're putting a face or voice to it, begins and ends with your mindset. Not only around who the content is for, who you're targeting, but the stories you tell yourself up here. And it's good to hear that you have a positive relationship with that voice, because instantly that's going to give you way more confidence to connect with your audience.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that, because I feel very similarly about starting a business or starting anything, because I think most things you start and try for the first time, you're probably going to suck at it at first. It's probably not going to be great, and you have to kind of be okay sucking for a little while until you become decent at it, and then eventually become good at it. Not because maybe you're just naturally an amazing podcaster, naturally amazing at starting a business, but you just recorded 50 episodes, and then you just grow and become better at it. It's the same with WP Buffs. When we started, I was what am I doing? And now only most of the time I say, what am I doing? Well, I know thinking a little bit more than I did 5 years ago, but I totally agree with that. I think you've been doing podcasting stuff for a long time, and now you're running your own business. But I want to give folks even more about your background, because you didn't always run your own business. You've done other stuff in the podcasting world as well. Worked for some pretty big podcasts and pretty big brands in the podcasting space, or really in just the world. So I'd love you to tell folks a little bit more about your whole story about kind of what you did before starting Record Edit.
Yeah, right on. I have to be careful what I say because of contracts and stuff. In the past, sure. I kind of
Bradley
ignored
may have
that.
signed some NDAs or something, so he has to be a little careful about some of the names. But maybe whatever you're comfortable with.
I'll throw them out there. We'll redact them. We'll just cut them out. But so make it a little more mysterious. So the past 2.5 years, I've been in the podcast world going on 4 years now. Past 2.5, I work for a top 10 podcast network. Specifically, fortunately, the audience isn't going to hear this, but between us, they went from a small little production house like I am currently to a also redacted. Lots of growth, tons of growth. We went from a small 4-person team when I joined to over a 20-person legit company. Ton of fun, learned a lot, worked with some huge shows, and a small hand in a lot more. Because at a certain point, I was helping like build not really like remote studios, but the big thing in like LA and the West is like this idea of like a business out of your mansion, it's like, so I would be on location, like just like setting up people's podcast studios, maybe be there for the first episode or two, and then that would get handed off to someone else to run. But yeah, throughout the whole experience, I've probably produced, I would say 3,000 episodes, done probably 500 million views and downloads collectively. And
Wow.
I've seen the silliest mistakes and done like the craziest like live event kind of thing. There was one episode of that we did live, and we had like we like set up a little stage and did all kinds of like cool like DJ lights and stuff, and streamed the whole thing live, and that was insane.
Wow, cool.
So like from the guy that can't figure out his microphone to like this entire like live produced event, like I've seen it all.
Yeah, that's such a different level of like, yeah, like you've been across the gambit of like, different different areas of podcasting, the basic to like, wow, crazy, like really event production.
Yeah.
You've worked at and done, oh man, those are some big shows, right?
Yeah.
So you've worked in kind of, I don't know if I'd call it high pressure situation, but like a bigger show is always a little bit more pressure to make sure everything's really perfect. And then there's like this show, which is like, most everything goes right. And then, but if something small goes wrong, it's like, whatever, it's just WPMRR podcast. It's okay. So
that's not the case. Like I try to treat every show with the same respect, because like working with those big guys, they really taught me a lot about professionalism. And the word I always use is like high stakes, because at the end of the day, they're people too, and they're just running a business like we are, and they just want the best, and you just have to be very careful. You need to be present in the moment and really do your very best. And what we always would do is like postmortems. It's always like, okay, the thing is done. Now let's break down everything we could have done better, and then reiterate on the next one, and just like keep building.
Yep, I think that's very smart. It's the same with the business you're growing. You're gonna see the same. You're going to see the same success if you have that same mentality, because it's really the same thing. It's like try something, measure it. How did it work? How can we improve it? What can we double down on? It's really, really similar. I'd be interested to hear from you about someone who's worked on some smaller shows, but also some really big shows. What you feel like? I feel like you have a nice, unique perspective on this. Like, what do you feel like is the difference between a show that kind of, hangs out, does decently well, and maybe draws an audience, a small audience? What's the difference between a show like that and like a really a big show, maybe like a top 500 in the world podcast kind of audience? Do you feel like there's a difference between those two podcasts and like what the really top big audience podcasts do in terms of trying to grow listenership and stuff like that?
Fundamentally, no. It's just as you grow, you kind of get increased access to higher and higher profile people. And the biggest thing though, when people ask me questions like this, is like I like to break it down as there's two types of shows. And at the end of the day, it really depends on your goals. Like, do you want to, because basically the biggest podcasters are influencers, whether they had pre-existing audiences or whether they built it through the podcast, they are now their brand. And you have to know that going into this, that it's like, what are you trying to do? Like, if you're trying to have a podcast, that's too vague, because there's so many different genres and types of podcasts. I like to break it down simply as there's two types of shows, really. There's the influencer show, which is basically the model of, hey, I've got a big following, a percentage of my millions of followers is going to convert. We need minimum like 30,000 listens per episode to monetize with ads. So if you're a big influencer like the other guys I mentioned, then like you're easily cranking like $250,000 downloads an episode. In ad dollars, that's like nearly 10 grand an episode. But that's an influencer show. The second type of show is more common, but also a lot of people make mistakes on this, and that's what I call like the like a business show kind of, but not in the sense of like, hey, we talk about business things, but as a like a marketing tool. Because like, yes, you're creating content, but more importantly, you're creating connections. Like not getting too deep on my backstory. I was a kid from like small town Indiana cutting firewood in the winters. Like I had no connections to anybody, anything. Like I had nothing. But through this industry, even though that for the longest time my role has been in the background, it gave me an excuse to reach out and connect with anyone. Because at a certain point, I realized that I can bring something valuable to the table that a lot of people are missing out on, and that's the end. That's always the end, right? It's like, hey, I love what you're doing. Here's something you could do to improve, and maybe it'll have like XYZ result. Are you down to try it? And it's like you do that enough, like you're going to get a handful of people that say yes, and it's just the network effect, right? You get one person that gets another person that gets another person. Next thing you know, like you know all these people. So that's where the business show comes in. Because like even with WP Buffs and WPMR, like I've talked to you about this, Joe. It's like, what if like we break down who's your most profitable customer at WP Buffs? Like I would assume it's like agencies or some sort of umbrella account. And then it's like, what if I don't know your industry well enough, but then it's like, what if you target these people that you know would net you like a dozen to 20 like new accounts tomorrow? You bring them on the podcast, you talk to them about their business, put the spotlight on them, give them a great experience, genuinely make a personal connection, and then follow up when the episode comes out and be like, hey, like we do these things. I think I can help you. Would you be down to try it? And that's the business show. And I personally like number 2 more than number 1 because the influencer show really, it's such a small percentage of people that don't already have pre-existing audiences that see success. So if we're talking statistically, you're spinning your wheels in the mud. Like definitely go after it, but don't hedge all your bets on that one thing.
Yeah, I think that probably definitely in the WordPress space, like there may be a few people who can do more influencer like shows, and there are some shows out there. I think about like Matt Report is like it's kind of an influencer show because Matt is kind of like a personality in the WordPress space, but it's also a business show. It's kind of a mix between the two, I guess I'd say. I don't know. Matt, let me know what do you think about that. I don't know, but I think a lot of people have the opportunity to do a more business related show, and I really like the idea of kind of strategy around what the best kind of content you can create is and what the best kind of like guests you can have on in order to further your actual business goals. Because I think I definitely thought about podcasting. I was just kind of like, what do I want to talk about? I still kind of do that. I'm like, what do I want to talk about? Like without really thinking about the business stuff. Cause like, to me, that's part of the reason of doing a podcast. So I can have fun and like talk about what I want to, of course. And everyone should do that. But when you're thinking about having some sort of ROI, there's definitely strategy you can put into place for what kind of content will have the best return for you. What kind of guests can you have on that you can follow up with to do more? I've had experiences where like I had Allie, who's now on our team. I had Allie Nimmons on the podcast. I can't remember what episode that was. And then I hired her like, 6 months later or something. So I don't know if that directly led to it, but it was one of those stepping stones and like hiring a new great community manager on our team. So like that had a great positive influence. And so that's like an interesting way that this podcast has helped my business grow. Even if it wasn't like a new customer, it was like a new person on the team who can help have a big impact for us. I've had people on the podcast who I've done like masterminds with, like Brad Tunari runs this company called Delicious Brains. Like him and I talk pretty regularly about like, what's going on with your business? Oh, like that's interesting. Tell me more about that challenge. Oh, have you tried X, Y, or Z? That's been really helpful for me. And he was one of my first episodes. I think he was like one of the first 10 episodes I had on the podcast. So like even early people, when you don't have a big audience, like having the right guests can help you make the right connections and build your network. So I totally dig that.
Yeah. I love to see that. Like that's great to hear.
Yeah. Awesome, man. I want to dig a little bit more into that. What you said about how big your show has to be to do sponsorships or to start, I guess, thinking about sponsorships. Cause I know a lot of people, I think for most people in the WordPress space, that business model show is going to be more helpful to you. Like, how do you make a return on investment in terms of driving customers, in terms of driving traffic to your site, in terms of, maybe making hires, some of the stuff I talked about. But I think a lot of people are also thinking about that sponsorship model. That's probably the most traditional way to monetize a podcast is having sponsor roles. You mentioned kind of 30,000 downloads an episode as that number that you probably want to hit in order to probably be attractive to potential sponsors. Tell me a little bit more about that, because there are definitely people in the WordPress space who run WordPress specific podcasts and do sponsorships. And that is an avenue for folks. So yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. Like, how could I do like more sponsorship stuff if I wanted to on the podcast?
There's a couple caveats to that. First and foremost, I come from kind of like the Hollywood podcast scene where it is more general audiences. So 30,000 kids that buy T-shirts is going to be a lot different than 30,000 like WordPress professionals that buy expensive plugins. So firstly, that number is semi-arbitrary. You definitely do need an audience to pull from, but it's going to vary by industry. I'm not sure what it is for WordPress, but for more general shows, it is around 30 to 50,000 downloads per episode. Because think of how like ads work. It's basically a company pays X thousands of dollars, gets their thing in front of so many eyeballs, ears, whatever, and only a small percent actually convert. So you need a large pool of people to pull from. So for a lot of podcasters, like once they hear that someone says, "Oh, you need like 10,000 downloads, 30,000 downloads, 100,000 downloads," a lot of people just like shut down. But that's where I say, like, first and foremost, it should be a tool to promote your own business, because even when you do have ads, here's the problem with ads: it's feast or famine. Like you might get a big campaign, and once that campaign's done, things might be dark for a while. So you might have a burst of like 50 grand, but then nothing for the next couple months. But that's where the networks come in, because the networks basically pool all these shows together of similar genres and will contact whoever. I've got Jade Black sunglasses on my table right now. Jade Black probably wouldn't advertise in WordPress, but let's just use them as an example. So basically, a network comes along. Let's say they have 30 shows and they're doing like 10 million downloads a month, and they approach these sponsors and they reach out. They get a response from Jade Black. They're like, okay, well, we want $25 CPM, and we'll do a 3-month campaign. And then
CPM is
cost per thousand. So like the cost per thousand downloads.
1,000 downloads.
Yeah. So for the generalized show, that tends to hover between like $18 to $25. And like I've seen so many like new podcasters like, oh, we do 1,000 downloads. It's like, how can we monetize? I'm like, you're not gonna like to hear this.
You want $25? Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why 30,000 is the metric, because at that point I forget right off the top of my head, but I think that's like $10,000 a month, because typically it's standard practice to have like 3 to 4 mid rolls per episode within like 2 breaks, first like 8 minutes and the first 20 minutes. So 4 ads total, which if you can book out that entire thing, I think is like 10 to 15 grand. And then considering that networks take anywhere between 20 to 50% of that, like that's the point where it's like, okay, it's good enough to like staple on with these big shows so we can sell more Jade Black. So that's kind of how that works. But when it comes to like the more tech stuff, like, yes, that is a world that I'm not super familiar with, but right. I guarantee you they're going to want more than like 1,000 downloads, because like, even if only 0.5% convert, like that might not be enough for them to break even.
Yeah, understood. I want to dive a little bit more into like podcast analytics as well, because we talk a lot about like CPM is like cost per 1,000 downloads, and I hear this question a lot, and I actually like continue to like kind of have this question around analytics, which is like, okay, if I have a show with like it's 1,000 downloads, like what if like 1,000 people downloaded the show and like listens to like 5 seconds of it and then turn it off? How does it like analytics around podcasting work around? Like, is there really a difference, or are there tools out there that can tell you the difference between like actual downloads, which is one metric, but also like what's the engagement of your show and like what's the listenership? Like how many people are listening like halfway through the episode? How many people are listening 3/4 of the way through the episode? Downloads versus actual like listenership and engagement. They're slightly different things. So I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about that and see if that's like a pain point for you as well, or if that's something that, maybe there's a solution out there for.
Analytics right now in the industry is like laughably bad. Basically, you have two options. You've got whatever's in your hosting platform, which just shows like pure like how many people actually click downloads. But there's also Podcast Connect, which is like a iTunes service. I'll have to share you on the login on that, but it shows the average consumption. But statistically, like most podcasts are consumed between like 60 to 80% of the way. I forget the exact number. I can find the study. There's a big what is it called? I think it's called the Infinite Dial. Let me look this up real quick.
Sure. I was thinking about how I listen to podcasts, and I have like on my podcasting app, what's it called? Downcast. It's just like a podcasting app, right? So like I just have my app here and I have all my podcasts here. I download a lot of podcasts that I subscribe to. They automatically download on my phone, which I would assume like that counts as a download. But like half these shows I probably don't listen to. Like probably like 80% of them I don't listen to. So like maybe that download just means like it downloaded onto someone's phone and they never actually listened to it. I don't know if a download means they actually press play at some point to start it. But like to me, I'm like, I don't really know what downloads means. Like, I could have someone pay me for CPM for 30,000 episodes, but it's like if I just have 30,000 subscribers who never actually listen to the show, like that's going to convert badly, and then I can't keep that sponsor for more than a month or something. So yeah.
Well, that's the biggest issue in just digital media advertising as a whole, right? It's like same with page views. It's like you don't know if somebody just accidentally clicked on your site, or it's the same.
That's
kind
what
of
I think about every single mobile ad. It's like 90% of those must have been someone accidentally clicking, because no one clicks it. I don't know. I never click those.
Which is why they need the volume. That's why they need to know that they've got a very large pool of people to pull from, and it can feel like disheartening at first, but once you know that, there's actually other ways you can go about it. I know Nathan Lotka, I recently reconnected with him. The way he does his sponsors is pretty atypical from what the networks do, because the networks do have that like carpet bomb approach of like, okay, well, we know we're doing this many downloads and we hope that like we'll continue doing this many downloads because we promise like so many downloads for the sponsors at this CPM, whatever. But Nathan has an interesting model, and he talked about it on the Indie Hackers podcast. And that's that he tries to beat the company's CAC, which is what a customer acquisition cost. So his pitch isn't, hey, I'll get you this many downloads. It's, hey, pay me essentially like, hey, pay me more than you would have paid me for the downloads. But what I'm going to do is like get you more customers at a lower cost. So he's just cutting.
The CAC is the customer acquisition, pretty much. It's a customer acquisition cost for folks listening. So it's like, how much does it cost you to acquire a customer? Is it $10? Well, and so what you're saying is Nathan will say, oh, it costs you $10 to get a customer. Like, I'll do it for $5.
Yeah.
I'll get you customers for $5, and I'll give you 1,000 customers. Well, you pay me $5,000, but I got you 1,000 customers.
Right. And that's something that I haven't really experimented with like personally, but basically the more creative you can get, the better, because that kind of standard, like the quote is like everything popular is wrong. Right. So it's very difficult to get enough downloads to monetize a show in the traditional sense. But if you get creative, there's infinite opportunities.
Yeah, actually, I've been on Nathan's podcast, and I listened to his episode on the Indie Hackers podcast. I thought that was a super interesting model. I'm always interested to hear what people are doing that's kind of atypical from what most people are doing. I thought that was a very interesting model, and clearly it's working, because I think he said on the Indie Hackers podcast he makes like $750,000 a year just from the podcast. So clearly, like that's a pretty good model. I know he records a ton of episodes, and all his episodes are like 15 minutes, and I think, like Channing at Indie Hacker said one time he saw like Nathan's calendar or something, or a screenshot of his calendar, and it had like 10 episodes being recorded in one day, because he was like, boom. And he obviously, like, I think he has like 15,000 episodes he's released or something crazy, because he does such short episodes that he can just like boom, 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 work through them. But clearly, something's worked for him there. So that's a good example, I think, of people thinking a little bit outside the box in terms of like, what's the value of a sponsorship? It's not like, my value, if I wanted to sponsor something, it's not like I don't really care about the number of downloads I'm in front of or people like I care about like traction, I care about momentum, I care about like the impact on my business. How does that actually grow my business? Like what's my return on investment? If it's from one download that gets me one listener, that gets one huge customer, cool. Like unless, that's obviously there's a risk there to having one big customer, but if I get a million downloads and no one listens, like I'd rather have the one, right? So,
well, you got to think too, Joe. Like it depends what market or what department you reach out to. Because if it's like a marketing department from a business, it's like, yeah, they get this budget and their entire goal is to make an ROI on the budget, right? But if you can get someone on the executive level that understands like that CAC, like it doesn't matter how many people you carpet bomb. It's like how many people actually convert to customers. And if you can reach that higher level and like pitch that instead of just like, hey, we'll get you this generic arbitrary number, instead say, hey, I will do whatever it takes to like get this ROI for you. Like that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, that's a very good point. And that probably has to really do with who you're talking to. You have to really know who you're talking to and know not just your audience of listeners, but your audience of like sponsors, and to know what do they want? They want an ROI. Yeah. So that's a good point. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk about something else that you've recently started helping us out with more, which is like using our podcast in multiple ways. So for about 100 episodes, we just did audio. Probably because I was lazy and because I like the audio version. And I was like, whatever, video. Okay, I understand why you'd want to do video, but I just kind of never got around to it. And then we started actually publishing, Allie came on board and she started our YouTube channel. So we've got a YouTube channel with a bunch of tutorials. And I was like, well, it's kind of a waste to like be whatever in this app, riverside.fm, and be recording video and not just like throw it on, do some editing and throw it somewhere and try and grow that as part of the YouTube channel. So now folks can, listen to this podcast on their app, but they can also listen and watch on YouTube. And I think this comes into this whole world of like multi-purpose content and using your like maximizing your content. So we have, you have audio, but there's also video, and there's like social. You could turn it into a blog. You could turn it into an ebook. Like there's a lot of different stuff you can do. And we're, could probably always do more. But right now we're like mainly focused on like the audio and video, and that's the big thing right now. And that's something your company has been doing, I assume, for other folks as well. You help with all the audio engineering, and the podcast is fantastic. Obviously, I already talked about like super professional level, like sounds great, but there's more you can do, right? There are other steps you can take to continue to grow your audience, not just, in, your podcasting audience, but okay, now gets more subscribers on YouTube. There's more you can do. And that's something that Record Edit has been helping with. So tell me a little bit about like that piece of your business and like helping folks really like maximize what they're doing, given, hopefully putting in about the same amount of effort.
Yeah. So the big thing, the most popular thing we do to help people is like we offer multi-channel podcasts, which, as you're saying, like I always explain it as like everyone has their preferred content medium, right? Some people like to read, some people like to listen, some people like to watch videos, some people like to just like scroll through Instagram and Twitter. And my thought process behind that is be everywhere, because all you have to do is turn on a camera and you've essentially doubled your podcast's reach from the baseline. But when you take it a step further and you pull clips for like social media, that stuff has the potential to literally go viral and could be the catalyst to skyrocket the show, which is what we've seen with the bigger influencer brands, especially when they have that pre-existing audience, because then you know that it's going to get a little bit of traction. And then once it hits like the discover page or the retweets start blowing up, like it's exponential. So it's like if you're just doing an audio format, the big issue with audio podcasts is they're hard to discover. Like you literally have to go to Apple or Spotify and like type in the exact title of the show to pull it up. It's not very often that like it just pops up somewhere and you're like, hey, what's this? Because a lot of the best content we kind of find by chance, right? It's that viral TikTok, it's that viral whatever that just like pops up one day and you're like, hey, what's this? And then you're a new consumer of that person's content. So that's where multi-channel podcasting comes in, because from just flipping on a camera, now we have that YouTube video. Now we have those social media assets. And we already have the audio podcast. We already have the blog that comes along with the audio podcast. But now we're in 4 places versus just the 2. And 1 has the potential for exponential returns, because just the virality of social, like Joe Rogan, who actually sits down and listens to a 3-hour episode of Joe Rogan? Like, people do, but it can't be that many. But everyone's super familiar with the Joe Rogan clips. Same kind of thought process.
Yeah, it's like JRE Clips is a YouTube channel. And I know they cut their episode, like they'll have a 3-hour episode and cut it into like 8-minute bite-sized pieces, and then I'll throw all those videos on YouTube. And I assume, I've seen some of the views on that. They get millions of views, all those little clips. So it's a easy way to get like millions for him. That's one of the biggest podcasts in the world, right? So, but
it is the biggest.
Since we're using him as an example, it's tens of millions of more viewers every episode, just basically, because he threw some clips together. Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. Okay, so I have other things I want to talk about too, but let's dive into this a little bit more, because you talked about audio, video. There's a social aspect, which honestly, like, we don't really do that well as a podcast. So I think it sounds like you're telling me, like, Joe, we should probably do some more like clips, maybe video clips to social, and do like maybe some 30-second clips and like tweet them out, so that we have like clips people can watch and just pretty easily like retweet. And you link to the podcast episode, people can come in and then subscribe, and that might lead to more people subscribing. Is that a piece of advice you'd say, Joe, you should probably be doing that, since you're not doing it right now?
Yeah, I would love to do more social media stuff with you guys, because you're right. I think right now you're sharing just like static images, right? But it's like on Twitter, I think Twitter is kind of like your place, right? And not like Instagram or Facebook. Okay, yeah. So on Twitter, like, you're scrolling and it auto plays, and somebody just has to hit it to hear it. So it's like, instead of just tweeting a link to the show with like a thumbnail, it'd be cool to have like the best 1-minute chunk. But I think Twitter's like 2.5 minutes is the limit. So we do like a 2-minute clip with captions. That way people can see and like read a little bit before they click on the sound, because it's weird. Like, I think 80% of social media users don't listen to videos without, or watch videos without volume. And I know for myself, I'm definitely one of those people. So like, captions,
it's important to have those captions there. Totally.
So people are scrolling and they see the video first before they read the text most of the time. And it's like, okay, well, what's this? They read a little bit of the captions, they look up at the link, like maybe they click, I don't know. But every time you have a moving video, you're going to get higher engagement than just like a static image.
Yeah, that's probably true. And I just watched the Social Dilemma, which, oh man,
that's great,
being heavy. So I'm like very wish-washy on social right now. I'm kind of like, fuck social media. But I also know they said, they measure your engagement like based on not just clicks, but like how long you're like stay scrolled on something, because they're measuring like how many seconds you were watching something. So if someone stays on WP Buff's tweets for longer periods of time, like maybe we'll come up more around WordPress stuff and like their algorithm or something. That's a whole nother conversation around like how much investment in social do I want to make after watching that. But I mean, that's definitely a factor, right? We'll say that. I had a question about SEO. And like the way we publish our show, we publish it across all the podcasting apps. So we have wpmrr.com/podcast, or all our podcasts are available right on our website. And, you help us out with show notes and transcripts, and that's all right there. I would want to know, as someone who's worked with some small shows, but a lot of big shows as well, probably some pretty high authority shows and websites. Have you seen people be successful driving traffic from search engines to their podcast pages? Because I think we've had a little trouble with that. Our domain authority is not super high on that page or on that website on wpmrr.com. And kind of our options are either like obviously we want to rank for like if someone searches for WPMRR WordPress podcast, I think we're pretty easy to find if someone searches that branded term. But like around, for this episode, how to like, start your podcasting 101. Like, it might be kind of hard for us to rank for that. Like, or your name, Bradley. Like, if you were like an influencer, you are an influencer, Bradly Denham, the big influencer. people are searching for you online. Maybe they want to listen to this episode where we talked about podcasting. So I want to rank maybe for your name instead. I don't know if you've worked with shows that have been successful, really driving traffic through like Google searches using that strategy of like trying to rank for either the name of guests or like the title of their episode, what it's about, or stuff like that.
Typically, the rule of thumb is like to include the podcast name in the title. So like on YouTube, for example, we'll have like whatever the title of this episode is, it'll like include my name and whatever we talk about. But then there'll be like the line break thing, like the vertical line space, WPMR podcast number, whatever. The number is kind of arbitrary, but that WPMR podcast like gives us that boost of like, okay, if somebody's searching like Bradley Denham WPMR podcast, like boom, I'm there. But in terms of driving cold traffic, you got to think about the intention behind that. Most of the time, people are looking for one little like slice of information to solve the problem. They're not really there for a serious time investment. So although personally, I have landed on a handful of web pages that did have podcasts, I was there for a very specific piece of information to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. And I might have like click play on the podcast, but I never listened to it. Like it's just like a habit kind of thing. Cause like I'm so used to like outreach and stuff and like, oh, I'll listen to a few minutes of it, but it's like, I'm not there for that. I'm there for the information and I move on. But most of the time, like it is like a positive, like brand interaction, but seldom do I even recall like who it is or go back. The more valuable thing, though, is that social media, because then you open the door to virality and engaging your already existing audience. Because the big issue is like people have followings, right? And they don't know what to post. This gives you like something to post. And if you do it right, my proposition is like create 3 social media clips and like 2 graphics, post one every single business day. That way, like you're slowly growing, you're keeping your community engaged, that kind of thing. Because that's a lot more controllable than like doing whatever it takes to get first page of Google and like hoping that you get a relevant audience.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know. I can't remember last time I searched for someone and found a podcast episode about that person, and then I subscribed to the podcast because I was really just like wanting to learn more about that person. Like I don't need to like subscribe to that podcast right now. So I get that, and I think that sounds right to me just based on my like some of my knowledge. That sounds like the right move for sure. I want to talk a little bit about like podcasting equipment. I think this topic, like everybody talks about this topic, right? And I don't want to ask you the question, what if I want to get like the cheapest podcasting equipment? Like what if like how do I start my podcast? Like what starter equipment should I use? Because I think there's a lot of content out there around that. Hey, people can grab like a Blue Yeti, okay? Or you could just use your Apple headphones or whatever. Starting is starting. I want to ask you a little bit. Maybe you disagree with that. I want to hear your opinion on that too. But I want to ask you kind of like, if someone seriously wants to start a podcast, maybe they're people who are like already running a business and they want to grow their audience through their podcasting. So they have something to invest in something. If you had like $1,000 to start a podcast, what kind of equipment would you use? I think that's a slightly different question than like if I had $100, what should I do? $1,000, a little bit more you can invest in maybe a nicer microphone or nicer headphones. What are the important things? And also to keep in mind, like working from home, what can I hook up easily at home? And maybe some mobility as well, you know?
Yeah.
People aren't super mobile right now with COVID, but like, you know, how can you record here? Like I want to record here. I'm going to be somewhere else in a different house next week. How do I just pick up, move somewhere else to be able to record from there? That's important for me as well. So yeah, $1,000. What kind of equipment what kind of equipment would you recommend for folks to use?
Okay. First off, I want to touch on the guy that has $0 because maybe okay. Like this is something that you think you're passionate about and you want to give it a shot. I never want the money or the equipment to be the thing that holds you back because really the primary thing holding you back really is that mindset, right? Because everybody thinks they need the biggest and the best before they even get started. And then they realize they suck because they just haven't got those reps in because the truth is like everybody sucks at everything the first time they try anything new. This is no different, but I have actually played around with just like an iPhone and in a closet. And like, I don't have a t-shirt right now, but like I've got this mask, right? So it's like, these have surprisingly good microphones. And it's like, if you have like a shirt or something to act as a pop filter Like it's literally going to sound as good as most microphones you can buy as long as you're in like a closet. And that can be a very easy way to just start. Now, if you
Mask
are
plus iPhone.
but if you are serious and you want it as like a cash flow positive marketing channel for your business, then $1,000 is still like too much. Like I can break down what I'm using right now. Like I've got only 3 components to this setup that you see now. I could do a lot more with like the set design, but that isn't as important as just the pure audio video quality, right? So starting with the microphone, this is the ATR 2100. It's a USB and XLR combo mic. So we'll come back to that in a second about how the XLR can help, because that's kind of the traditional like plug-in for a mic. And then talking about the camera, I've got the Logitech Brio 4K. It's overkill. I spent too much on it. It's like let me break down the prices too. So this is like a $60, $70 microphone. You can get a bundle with the stand, the shock mount, the headphones, all of that. You can get that for like $120, and that takes care of your microphone. Done. Don't think about that. Number 2 is the camera. So I've got the Logitech Brio 4K. I think it was like $230 after taxes, and I only got it because of the 4K support, because I'm kind of a nerd when it comes to this stuff. But honestly, I think the other option is like the Logitech C920. It has similar sensors and stuff. It'll have comparable quality in 1080p for like $100 less. So it's like $150 webcam. And then off to my left here, I've just got a softbox photography light, and I've got like 2 diffusers on it and like a t-shirt over it to just like soften it out a little more, because it's just like a cheap light from Amazon. I think the kit was like $100. So our total cost is like just under $500. And like you never have to think about it again. Literally, like the microphone plugs in via USB, the webcam plugs in via USB, the light, you just set it off to a 45-degree angle and put enough diffusion on it so it doesn't like blow out your face. The big thing that irritates me right now is like this window in the background, and your window too, Joe. Like it frustrates me all the time.
I'm watching my own video as you're talking about this. I'm like, I've got some light on my face. Should I like?
But it's like if I had some curtains on these windows, like I'd have better lighting. But that's it. Like that's the baseline components to any kind of media, is just like sound, video, light. And this is just the simplest way that I've found to get like professional results without like spending a ton of money, because you could very well spend that whole budget of $500 on one microphone, like the Shure SM7B, the one you see Joe Rogan using. Like that's a $400 microphone, and it doesn't even come with a stand and cable. So like after that investment, like you spent $600 on one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, and he just is now on Spotify for like $100 million deal. So I think he can probably afford like a $400 microphone. I really like that answer actually, because I think that price should never be you should never think about price when it comes to starting and trying something out. And as someone who's worked again on like big shows, on setting up like super expensive podcasting studios for people for probably tens of thousands of dollars. You say you don't need all that stuff. Okay, maybe how do you get to like a 8 out of 10 audio quality and video quality? Probably spend $500 and do this. Dude. How do you get to like 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10? Maybe then you need to spend some more money to like really get the top. Like how do you get like super high quality video? Maybe you need $2,000 camera or something. But and to be fair, I use all the same equipment you do, probably because you told me about it. And I asked you, hey, Bradley, can you just point me to an Amazon, something I can buy on Amazon, a video and a mic? And you said, yes, here too. And I said, buy. And it came, 2 days later, and here we are. So I have the same one, the ATR 2100 USB, and then the Logitech Brio 4K. Yeah, for $300 total, about through maybe $325. You got great quality stuff.
Awesome. After the show, we need to work on your lighting a little bit, because if you're using the same camera, like it.
Yeah, totally. Actually, I think I bought him. I think I asked you about lighting too, and you told me the light to buy, and I bought it, but it just never showed up, and I just forgot about it. So I think maybe I got to go into my Amazon orders and just like figure out why it didn't show up.
Yeah.
Maybe someone grabbed it off my porch or something. It was such a
Oh.
high quality light or something. I don't know. Yeah, cool. I want to close out a little bit and talk a little bit more about record edit, because you've had a lot of experience now doing, being an audio engineering, being an audio engineer, and now you've kind of stepped into a new adventure for yourself, which is like you're helping to execute on a lot of this stuff, but you now have a team you're working with, and that's a whole different ball game. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about like how stuff record edit is going now that you have a team working with you. How is the actual like growing your own business doing this stuff, as opposed to really maybe being the individual contributor and executor at a top 10 podcast company?
It's been an experience because it really is an entirely different mindset and skill set, right? For the longest time, it felt like I was just like a freelancer, right? Because like I was working the 9 to 5 job, taking on more and more clients on the side until the side gig overshadowed the main gig. And then like changes at the company, I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to leave because I really like the work anywhere and anytime you want kind of digital nomad lifestyle. And I left, and we were hovering around like $7,000 a month, monthly recurring revenue. Now we've got $12K a month in the pipeline, and I'm about to hire our first full-time editor. Right now, the team is only 3 people, with me as like the producer, CEO. We've got an account manager and writer, and a multimedia editor now. And we all kind of work in harmony to make sure that all the episodes go out at the highest quality and on time. And the big thing for me is just like continuing to get more and more customers to solidify kind of the brand and work my way out of the day-to-day editing, because that goes back to like that freelance mindset of like you actually recommended the E-Myth as like the very first episode, and it took me 100 episodes to actually sit down and read it. But it's that quote of like, I forget something about like the technical work, or I forget the quote off the top of my head, but basically like there's a clear distinction between like the business owner mindset versus like the technical person that's doing the day-to-day work. And for me, the hardest part has been extracting myself from the day-to-day, realizing that the most valuable thing I can do is to give people jobs they love and not be the one like doing the job every day myself. Because in order for this to grow, I have to be out there like this, put my face out in front of people, meet people, do whatever I can to bring as much value as possible, help people build their businesses. And like, that's how I'm going to grow. Not like sitting down and editing everything myself.
Yeah. I agree with you, man. It's a challenge to switch that mindset. That's probably the biggest challenge you're going to have, is like switching from being a solid individual contributor to being a CEO. It's a really super different skill set. I think about it as like, because I'm a math guy, so I really think about it like if you're an individual contributor, you're thinking about your own vector. So you're thinking about like where you started, and then you have this line that with an arrow at the end of it that's like that ends where you want to be. And like those are your projects, right? The things you're working on. How do I make this episode super high quality audio? How do I release it on time? How do I make this customer happy? Like those are, as an individual contributor, things you're doing. Now you're a CEO. You have 3 people at the company. So you're not just worrying about your own vector. You're worrying about 3 vectors. So you now have to worry about how long those vectors are, how effective they are. Are they all going in the same direction, or is one going left and one going right? And like, well, that's not going to be helpful for you. So anyway, that's a somewhat abstract way of thinking about it, but that's how I think about it. And that is a different skill set. But I think that the best asset you have is having a lot of industry knowledge and really and knowing what a really good final product looks like, because you've had that individual contributor mindset. So all you really have to do, like, there are going to be things you don't know. Like, you're probably not going to be great at hiring to start off with, because you don't really, like, how many people have you hired in the past? Probably not a lot. I sucked at hiring when I started, and so maybe you won't, maybe you will, but that's an area like I sucked at. Like, and leadership and motivation and understanding the individual strengths and weaknesses of different people, and when do you need to work on weaknesses. Maybe sometimes you don't, because like they don't worry about the weakness, just don't do stuff that's related to that, just work on your strengths. But maybe there are weaknesses that people do need to work on, or should people lean more on the strengths, and who has what strengths on your team and who has what weaknesses. Like these are all things you'll learn, and I have no doubt that you'll learn them.
I think the biggest thing I've learned is that like the soft skills are almost more valuable than the technical skills.
Absolutely.
It's so crazy.
I use my soft skills every day, and I barely use any hard skills anymore. Like I'm managing people, like I'm probing people, I'm asking questions, I'm reviewing things every once in a while and making sure things that are high quality. But like, yeah, really those, yeah, you said it already, but you're giving your team an awesome place to work, and you're like pushing your team to get results, and you're holding them accountable. Because I'll tell you one thing that I think, an area I made a mistake where I think it applies to a lot of people that are starting businesses, which is I always wanted to be super nice to people, and I wanted to give people a good place to work and all that. But at times I was too nice, and I didn't hold people to a high enough bar and enough accountable for the work they were doing. And I truly do believe now, because I've changed a little bit, I've become slightly more of a hard ass, not a hard ass, slightly more, I want to make sure I say that correctly, slightly more of a hard ass, because people want to do their best. People want to be held to high standards. They want to do a good job. They want to have an impact. And if you're just like, yeah, go do whatever, like, people may do whatever. Yeah. So I would say, do what you're doing, be awesome, be a good boss, be fun, whatever, but hold people to a high standard. You can be very respectful to someone and still hold them to a high standard. And I know you do that because the podcast still sounds great. Now you have the team working on it. So things going in the right direction.
Yeah. My team knows I'm a stickler for quality, because like that's the biggest thing that's helped me get ahead personally, is just like that attention to detail. And I hope they appreciate it. I feel like they do. Before we go, there's actually something I want to ask you, more of like general business advice, as like
for sure
an entrepreneur that's been there, done that. Is like, I feel like I'm reaching a point where there's always something to do, and I'm struggling with like knowing when to like step back and relax and kind of smell the roses and be more of a person and less of like a business person, because there's just when you're running a business, there's like so many things you can do, so many things you can focus on, and only a small portion are going to give results, but you don't know what it's going to be. So it's like it's very easy to just densely pack your calendar or spend several hours doing whatever. It's like, how do you balance work and life? Like, is there a balance?
Yeah. There are kind of two questions in there. I'm going to tackle them both, but one at a time. The first is like, how do you know like what to work on? And this totally comes from experience. It comes from, because there are 1,000 different things. You're right. There are 1,000 different things you could do today to move your business forward. But 990 of them are going to have little to no impact, and 10 of them are probably going to have a big impact. And the question is, how do I find which ones are going to have the big impact? I think you're very much on the right track on a lot of that stuff, not because I know it all what you're working on, but because you've emailed me and been asking me some questions every once in a while. And you asked me, hey, can I email you regularly to ask advice? And I'm sure, whenever you want to. That's going to be helpful to get some advice from people who have been there before. Not that maybe know your industry, because you're going to discover all that yourself, but people who know, that's probably, like I remember trying that. It didn't work for me. Probably won't work for you, because it's, you're in the same, so you're trying the same thing, but maybe here's what I tried and it did work. Take that advice and run with it. I think that's going to be super helpful. I think you already talked about this in this episode, but you have this good mentality of like these lean cycles of like, try something, experiment with something, like execute it correctly, measure it, and see the results. Don't spend 100 hours, with one project, and then, because what if it fails? Spend 2 hours on it and put it live and see what happens. You get some positive feedback from it. Okay, then you can keep working on it. So those lean cycles are super important, because you can do like 10 experiments at one time and find the one thing that works, as opposed to trying one thing for the same time it took you to do those 10 things, and then probably it won't work. I'd say also trust your gut, because I think you have good industry knowledge. Podcasting. growing a business is a different thing, but you know about podcasting, you know about the industry. That's a huge step up from someone. If I were to get into the podcasting industry, man, like I'd be asking you all the questions. I'd be like, Bradley, we got to meet once a week so I can ask you all this stuff. So, yeah, I think all that's important. Quickly on the second thing, work-life balance. I don't know. I'm actually a really bad person to ask about this because I think I'm pretty bad at work-life balance. Like as you can see from this video, my computer is in like the corner of my living room, so I can like jump on whenever I want to. Yeah. Have a kid, that definitely helps with work-life balance because it literally forces you to not work as much. I'm not actually telling you to have a kid, but I'm obviously joking. Yeah. But that's something that has been really helpful for me because I'm like really forced. I've actually always been really good at delegating. But because I actually really like the management of the projects, but not actually, I'm not always the best person to do it. And I know that. But now that Morrison's here, I can't, hop on all the time. And it's actually been super healthy for me. I would say definitely like one thing that was super helpful for me to be cognizant of my time was having a Pomodoro journal. I've written about this before. I think I've done a podcast episode about it, but it's just a journal where literally before you start your day, like write down the things you're going to do that day. Because that will, and I force my team to do this in Slack. Like every team leader in Slack at the beginning of their day, like hits up in Slack, here are the things I'm working on today. It's not 10 things. It's like 3 things.
Right.
If you end up, and those 3 things are what's going to make my day successful. What are the high impact things I'm working on? That way you really have a focus at the beginning of your day. Because I remember working and being like, I'd work for like 10 hours in a day. And Sterling would be like, so like, what'd you do today? And I'd be like, I don't know. I worked. Sterling, I worked on stuff. Okay. I had a really busy day and I did, but like, I don't know what I worked on. I couldn't remember because I didn't have wasn't present in my work. And that's the most important part and you've already said this, right? So being present in your work and making sure you know what you're working on because, hey, if you waste a day, whatever, but you want to learn from it and know what you can do tomorrow to do a better job. And the whole game is like getting 1% better every day.
Right.
It's not about, becoming $1 billion company. Maybe for some people it is. For me, it's more about, I just want to get a little bit better every day.
Yeah.
Continue to be a little bit more profitable, continue to run a little better of a business every day, make my employees a little bit happier every day, that kind of stuff. So I'm sorry, that was a long-winded answer to both those questions.
I love it.
Hopefully there was some helpful advice in there.
Definitely.
Right on. All right, man. This has been an awesome episode. I know the episode has been really good because I learned a lot. And awesome. After we hop on this call, we're going to talk about social media because we gotta do more around that. I'll pull you into that Slack channel with that team so we can get you more involved with that on the a week-to-week basis. Cool. Last but not least, tell folks more. Because there are obviously people here who want to start a podcast or maybe you're probably right now like, I love recording my podcast, but I hate the rest of it, or I don't want to do the rest of it, or I don't have the expertise to do the rest of it, or it's just not my area that I want to be working on any of that. So Record Edit can help with that. So tell folks a little bit more about like where they can find you, where they can find Record Edit online.
Yeah. So whether you have an existing show or want to start a new one, even Joe can talk about this right now. Like at my team, we try our very best to make producing a podcast as light as possible for the host. All we want you to do is just like show up and record a great episode, and we handle the rest. So yeah, the site is recordeditpodcast.com. You can schedule a strategy session. We can talk for free. I'm always happy to talk. And just let us know how we can help. If this is something you want to do, we'll try and figure out the strategy behind like how we can make it a profitable thing for you. Or if you have an existing show, we can kind of like onboard you, or at least like pull the curtain back on our process and how we could help. But yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, right on. Recordeditpodcast.com. If you go onto this site, you'll see this amazing review from this incredible guy named Joe Howard, who runs this WPMRR WordPress podcast, as well as a few other pretty big podcasts, especially big in like the startup community, which a lot of people here are really involved with. Indie Hackers, Code Story podcast. Clearly you're involved in those podcasts as well. So cool. Last but not least, Bradley, I always ask our guests to ask our listeners for a review on iTunes. So if you wouldn't mind asking the listeners for a little review, I'd appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. Reviews are very important. Not only do we ask for a review for WPMRR, you should ask for reviews too if you're a podcaster, and here's why. Going back to Joe's point about SEO and my point of the limited discoverability of shows on Apple and Spotify, reviews on Apple Podcasts help a show rank in the searchability, because most new shows, even if you search their name letter by letter, won't pop up because it hasn't been validated in like Apple's system that, hey, this is like an actual show people listen to. Because you got to think, like, thousands and thousands of people are starting shows every day. They do 2 episodes and it just sits there. So the thing to help it break through is the reviews, and the more the merrier. So go leave a 5-star review.
Yes, appreciate it. And also very good background knowledge. I'll give even a little bit more as well for me personally. When I get reviews and they have, if you leave a review, you can leave it with 5 stars without a comment, but take a couple seconds and leave a comment. One, because you can talk about something you learned from this episode, and I can thank Bradley for that for review and say, hey, Bradley, appreciate it. 2, it helps us stay motivated to do more episodes. And 3, it actually helps us to know what new content we should put out there. If I get 2 or 3 reviews on one episode saying like, hey, Bradley's episode was awesome, I learned X, Y, and Z, guess what? I'm going to have Bradley on again, and I'm going to do more episodes around podcasts, because clearly people are interested. They liked the episode enough to leave a review. That's clearly like a positive signal for that kind of content. So those things I will add as well. If you are a new listener to the show, we've got 120-ish episodes in the pipeline. Well, in the pipeline makes it sound like we're going to do those episodes that we've previously published, I guess I will say. So if you have questions on anything, WordPress, MRR, podcast, growth, running your own business related, go back and check out some old episodes. Don't get stuck binging your Netflix or your Hulu. Go and binge some WPMRR WordPress podcast. If you have questions for us at the show, Christy and I do like to do an occasional Q&A episode. So shoot your questions to yo@WPMRR.com, or you can hit us up on Twitter, WPMRR Summit, at WPMRR Summit, which brings us to our last point, which is WPMRR Summit, virtual summit. Just passed. We did our first one, went awesome. We're going to do another one next year. But if you want to go and see all those talks for free on our YouTube channel, you can go to WPMRR.com, and all those old episodes, or all those old talks are there for you from 2020 around everything related to building a successful subscription business, especially in the WordPress space. So go check out those talks. That's it for this week. We will be in your podcast players again next Tuesday. Bradley, thanks again for being on, man. It's been real.
Thanks, Joe.